Welcome to the LDN Radio Show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. Today we're joined by Sara from the US, who has MCAS and POTS, and she's going to share her experience with us. Thank you for joining us today, Sara.
Thanks, Linda. It's so good to meet you, and I'm just happy to be a part of this because, as we all know, advocacy and awareness is what's going to help further treatments for these disorders. And I have MCAS, POTS, and I've also been diagnosed with Bartonella, though my current doctor, we're retesting to see if maybe that one finally went away. I was diagnosed in 2022 by Dr. Afrin at the Ames Center for MCAS. He suspects that I was actually born with it, and it didn't really reach the highest point of showing itself to me until I was right before I turned 30, and I was living in New York, and they were spraying pesticides in my apartment. And that was kind of when it really started to rear its head. And I started to have anaphylactic reactions just about every day. It was pretty terrifying. And I'm just really thankful that, a doctor who was a friend at the time was the first person to say, I think this is what you have, and here's ways in which you can start to get it under control. So, as for a lot of people, it's really terrifying at first when you start to get the symptoms, especially if it's anaphylaxis. No one wants their throat to close on them, and I don't recommend it. But yeah, so been living with this probably since I was born, but it really didn't become severe till, like I said, I was 29.
Mm-hmm. So as a child, did you have rashes? Did you have stomach upsets? Did you have allergies to food? Tell us.
Yeah, so ever since I was a baby, my mom said she noticed I had an aversion to, she had switched me to like a soy formula when I was an infant, and I started to get, I believe, like colicky and a cough. And then from the time I was a baby, probably until my mid-20s, I would get sinus infections like clockwork every year, 1 or 2 major sinus infections. And Dr. Afrin told me he thinks that was because I had these food allergies we weren't aware of. So just over time, it would kind of like build up in me, and I'd get a sinus infection or an ear infection. I would get rashes here or there. I used to get them like, where I normally get them is on like my chest area. I'll get like the splotchy mast cell rash. And, I definitely am more allergic to insect bites than other people I know. That's been a thing since I was a child. A lot of brain fog growing up, especially when I got my menses, when I was like a preteen. I noticed that would get worse. A lot of like sinus headaches. And I just always thought I had really bad allergies. That's kind of like all I was diagnosed. Like, oh, take Zyrtec or Claritin. But none of the doctors really kind of knew to like get into the root of it. Like, because, as we know, not a lot of them are taught to think about MCAS as being a possible diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. So when you were growing up, other than taking some antihistamines periodically, did you take anything else at that time until you were in your 30s?
No, it would just be the antihistamines and then antibiotics if I got a bad sinus infection, which then I later found out could have aggravated the mast cell more, of course.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what was your diet like before you found Dr. Afrin?
Before I knew I had mast cell, I ate out a lot, especially in New York. I probably ate out most of my meals. So most likely had a lot of the oils that I then later found out I was allergic to, like canola oil, soy. I was still eating like gluten and dairy, and I would still have like alcoholic beverages. But I've since decided to I've stopped drinking alcohol because I was just like, it's not worth it for me. And I don't eat gluten anymore, no more dairy. And I cut out all of those like seed oils that I knew were like inflammatory. So I only will use olive oil, organic olive oil. And the only dairy that I'll use is like Kerrygold butter. So, but yeah, my diet's very whole foods. I don't eat out anymore because I just don't want to risk something being cross-contaminated. And I'm just like very particular about what I eat. And yeah, that's made such a huge difference for me. Like I actually lost, when I found out I had mast cell till like a couple years ago, I lost almost like 80 pounds at one point from just like, I feel like it was all the inflammation and all the bad fats that had been stored in my body for so long.
Amazing. So what did Dr. Afrin recommend you do?
So he recommended I find a doctor out here in California, and he recommended Dr. Sunny Frawley, and she's now my favorite doctor I've ever had, and that's who I see out here in California at Restoration Health. And she put me on different supplements to help with mast cell. And then earlier this year, I had a really debilitating flare up. I actually had to go out of work for quite a while, and that's when we started me on ketotifen. And that has made such a drastic improvement in my life. I'm kind of like, wow, I can't believe I didn't take this before, because I was always scared of having a reaction to medications, but I get it compounded and it's done wonders for me, quite honestly. It really has.
That's good. At your worst, could you describe a typical day for you from when you got up to when you went to bed? Everything you felt and did, what was it?
So on the worst day. So on a really bad day, I probably actually didn't sleep that much. I would probably be waking up once or twice in the middle of the night from like a histamine dump. And if no one knows what that's like, and my POTS would act up. So I get like tachycardia, wake up with like a racing heartbeat, and get a lot of anxiety. And then when I would eventually get up for the day, horrible brain fog. It would be hard to just remember things, like daily tasks. I'd be like writing everything down, have a bit of like cognitive dysfunction, might be at like a loss for words here or there. Also, when I'm in a bad flare, I could have like horrible migraine on and off throughout the day. And then sometimes I'll just feel like a tightness in my throat, especially like over here. This one gland seems to be the one that swells, and rashes throughout the day. And then sometimes I feel like joint pain from just like, I think the overall swelling. You can also I've had bad vertigo when I'm in a bad flare up. So it would be like hard to keep my balance. And then the worst, just random bouts of anaphylaxis where you're just like, where did this come from? You know, I could be eating something I know I'm not allergic to, but just even adding one more thing to my body, I just feel it. I feel my heart start to race. You start to get the sense of like impending doom, and your throat might get a little tight. And I'm like, oh God, do I have to take a Benadryl, or am I going to have to use the EpiPen? So, you know, it's when you're in a bad flare, I feel like you're in like kind of like a constant state of anxiety and fear, because you're not really sure what's going to happen, because it's just so kind of unhinged, you know?
Mm-hmm. And what's the typical day for you now?
So now, since, you know, getting more stable and being on the ketotifen, I sleep like a rock through the night, which is something I used to have trouble doing, but it puts me out. I haven't really woken up from like a histamine dump in quite some time. I'm able to concentrate at work, and I just feel like I have more energy, and I've been getting less like POTS flare up, so I don't feel my heart like the fast racing of my heart at random moments. And I actually was able to introduce a couple foods I hadn't had in a little bit, so that was good. And I'm like slowly trying to reintroduce things back in. But yeah, overall, like such an improvement in my life. And the other thing is the ketotifen, it made my anxiety like almost completely go away. So I really do believe that a lot of the anxiety I was suffering from was from my mast cells constantly like degranulating and whatnot. So that's calmed down a lot too. So yeah, overall, my message to anyone is like, if your doctor has a suggestion for a medication, you might be a little apprehensive, give it a try, because for me, it was like the magical drug for me that helped.
Mm-hmm. And what does your diet look like now? What foods can you eat?
So on a typical day, I normally start my morning with a blueberry banana smoothie with oat milk. So I'll have that. And I found a cereal that's only rice. It's like puffed rice. I'll have some of that with oat milk. And then lunchtime, I normally will do a couple eggs and spinach, and I'll cook it in olive oil. And then I try to drink at least like 16 ounces of carrot juice a day. I've noticed that helps my energy. And then for dinner, I'll normally do like chicken or ground beef, and then like a broccoli or asparagus, and like a gluten-free pasta. That's normally.
Wow. Okay. What would your advice be to other people who are starting on this journey of trying to find out, you know, who to go to, who to see, what to do?
So there are a lot of wonderful groups that you can join, especially on Facebook, of other people that have been diagnosed with mast cell or suspected mast cell. And that was kind of the first place I really went to start to get information. And it's just nice to have a network of peers who you can speak with who are going through the same things as you. So I highly recommend that. I made a wonderful friend through that group who also lives in LA, and we hang out like all the time. And it's just so nice to have that sense of community. And I think it's very important for anyone with a chronic illness or disease to feel that like you have other people that understand what you're going through and you can confide in them and everything. So I would do that. And then within that group, there's a couple people I've met who keep lists of doctors that know about this disease in your area. So I'm also one of those people who will reach out in the groups when I see, oh, I'm having trouble finding something. Like if I have the time, I'll message with them and try to help them find a doctor in the area. So.
That's good. So I'm trying to get a sense of your journey. Did you find any doctors that were very dismissive of your symptoms? How did that make you feel mentally?
Yeah, so I've been through a lot of medical gaslighting, as a lot of people have that have these sort of rare diseases. And I remember when I was first trying to get diagnosed in Philadelphia, where I was living at the time, I went to a very well-known university hospital. I don't know, I can say the name, I don't want to upset them, but I went to their clinic, their allergy clinic within the very well-known university hospital. And when I told the allergist that there's another doctor who has mast cell, they suspect I have mast cell too, he literally laughed at me like, you don't have that. That's so rare. And Linda, I started crying. Like, because at that point I was so just beaten down by everything and just like scared and trying to find answers. And to me, like getting that first diagnosis is like what opens the door to trying to figure out how to live the rest of your life and how to get treatment, right? So yeah, it was pretty terrible. And I remember even when I was in New York, when I first started to have the issues and I went to the doctor, they thought I had the flu because I was telling them about my throat. I was like, my throat got so tight. It was hard to breathe. And they put me on, I think it was Tamiflu, I believe. And I remember after I took that, I got even more ill. And then I ended up going to an ear, nose, and throat specialist in New York. And he did like the scope through my sinuses. And he was like, everything looks fine to me. But after he sprayed what was it? Like a topical anesthesia in order to do the scope, I almost passed out. And I remember he was like, well, I already had someone pass out this month, so my quota has been hit. And I was like, okay. And then later I find out people with mast cell disease, a lot of us are really sensitive to anesthesia. So I was like, oh, so once I kind of knew everything that had happened to me, like my whole life, like dominoes all fell into place. And I was like, that's what all of this is. So yeah, it's hard. And I really hope the medical community will start to listen more to the patients because, sure, there's a lot of people that will try to do Dr. Google, but as we all know, I think the new statistic that even Dr. Dempsey posted was like 14 to 17% of Americans might have mast cell disease. That's a lot. It's not rare.
No. And it's treatable if you know how to treat it once you've diagnosed it. So what's it like for you actually going outside in the real world, outside of your bubble of your home?
So when I go out into the real world, I always make sure I have a mask on me. That's something that I've been doing since 2019, since I knew I was like sensitive to things. And I, I try very hard to avoid, so I'll make sure I put a mask on, be it cigarette smoke or I want to go to a concert and there's like fog machines. One of the hardest things I would say is air travel, because when you're on a plane, you never know who's going to sit next to you, and you always kind of have to hope and pray they're not doused in cologne. I've had that happen to me before, and I had to literally take like Benadryl the whole flight because it was just like aggravating me. But yeah, I mean, and then I always prep my meals. So if I know I'm going to have a long day, I'll always bring something that I know is safe for me to eat. So like if I go to a theme park, I always pack like a special lunch. And yeah, like I said, I won't eat out anymore because I just don't want to risk it. And you know, if I get sick while I'm out, you know, you might be sick for the whole day, and especially if you're far away, it's not like a great thing, you know. So, but yeah, my life outside has been pretty decent. The last time I got on a flight, I actually did quite well, even though someone near me was using very fragrant like hand sanitizer, but I was okay. Yeah, I would just say always keep a mask on you just in case if you are like you have to be around smoke or something. And I also suggest, unless you really know your safe foods and you really trust the restaurant you're going to eat at, like just bring a snack with you. Keep it in your bag.
What about light and noise for you? Is that a problem?
Noise?
Yes, and light.
Oh, noise and light. No, I wouldn't say I've ever had issues with noise or light unless I have a migraine. But other than that, I've been, you know, pretty fine with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what can I say? Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
It's inspirational for other people who are, as you were saying, to have somebody who understands what it is you're going through. It's very important.
It's really important. And I remember when I was with Dr. Afrin, we were talking about, because at the time, Halsey had just been diagnosed, a very famous pop star. So I just feel that anyone else who's in the public eye like that, if they can just come forward and say it, because it does really create this sense of like advocacy and awareness, and makes you realize you're not alone. Even famous people get this, you know. So I'm just hopeful that, you know, documentaries can be made and people with mast cell can be written into scripted projects, and I think it'll help a lot.
I'm Dr. Leonard Weinstock, a guy who's been prescribing LDN since 2005, and I've seen the wonders. And I keep on seeing them, especially in hard to diagnose conditions. They're not that hard to do, but once you know about Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, you'll find that 17% of your friends or relatives have one or more of these conditions, and you can help them. We're making a documentary to wake up the medical community, to educate the population, but we need funding. So please fund whatever you can afford, no matter how little. www.mcasfund.com. That's mcasfund.com.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.